So there exists a world in a day where you can accomplish everything you said you wanted to do without feeling burnt out or unable to enjoy that life. It's the type of day that you can wake up feeling rested and excited that you got another day. It's the type of day where you have your relationships and you're building them, you're strengthening them, but at the same time, you're building wealth. Your bank account looks good, your mental looks good, and you really enjoy where you are in life. And that is possible, but being unable to consistently meet your business deadlines and your milestones on time will make sure that you always end up frustrated with where you are. And at that point, you start to compare your story to others. You start to look at where other people are in their journey and really feel the frustration to not be there in yours. You begin to look at people, especially those who are younger than you or started later than you on their journey, and you see them further ahead than you are, and it really puts into perspective. It's more than just investing time. It's more than just showing up. It's about having something tangible and real when you do show up. Because you don't want to start questioning whether you dreamt too big. You don't want to look at your age and say, oh, I'm approaching 30. You don't want to look at where you are in your career and say, I've put 10 years into this industry. You don't want to look at all these things and say, but I've showed up. Maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe this really wasn't a reality that could happen for me. And all of those things really are being because you have not realized that your business needs a scheduled plan to turn all that energy and all those resources into a reality that has consistent progress as your evidence. It is one where you know that every time that you show up, every time that you're investing, you feel, you know, you're certain that the needle is being moved forward. And at the same time, you can quantify by how much. You can justify the places of improvement and where you need to be better at. Because if the only thing between delivering on your promises for you, for your business, for your legacy, for your lifestyle, if the only thing in between that was properly learning how to balance expectations and resources, would you retrain everything you knew about setting goals? Because that's what you need to do. When you think about it, how many of those New Year's resolutions or weekly I'm going to do these objectives have failed? And will you accept that wanting something does not mean you get to acquire it? Think about it. If you got 10 times the amount of clients you have today, would you be able to maintain that increased demand when you currently cannot meet your current deadlines? That would only be more frustration for you. It would only be that point where your brand is known for not delivering. So this is another day, a lovely day. And so welcome back to the Envision Workshop Sessions, where we help entrepreneurs scale their business using systems. I'm your host, Amari Hanson, and today we'll talk about correctly gauging your available capacity so that you can avoid setting expectations that will leave you disappointed. I want to make sure that by the end of today's lesson, I give you the 4 steps you need to create a business plan that actually works. So you stop hoping that you get there. You know that everything that you set yourself to do is not random, it's not vague, it is specific and intentional, and is going to get you to scale your business to the next stage of maturity. Stop hoping. Deadlines should not feel like pressure. They should feel like the place of expected progress. It should feel like that moment you can really celebrate. Everything I did up to this point was for this. And so if you're new to the channel or you haven't checked out our last session, do yourself a favor and go back and check it out. Everything that we do here is about incremental progress. It is so that every lesson is a building block on what is to come. We give you the knowledge so that way, as you apply it, you start seeing the tangible results in your life, in your business, and you can grow. So stay connected, be engaged, like, comment, share, get down to the weeds of this and network. Because what you put in is what you're going to get out. So be committed to the journey. And when we think now to where we were last week, we are building off of that session because we described and discussed that being passionate does not mean being able to create a system. It was the harsh reality of what it costs to be a successful entrepreneur. There are qualifications, there are infrastructure that we need to get in place, there are assets, credentials, all these things we have to acquire before we get to the point of building. Because missing these critical parts will deny us the ability to create. These tangible products are created because we're combining skills, we're combining resources, and we're using it with the most expensive resource, time. So when we get to the place of creating, we need to ensure we have everything up front so we don't fail. Because now that we have all the prerequisites, now that we've gone out to collect them, to do the resource and the research for them, we need to properly set ourselves to grow intentional. And making progress, again, is not just about showing up. That is the bare minimum. It is about completing the work that matters. There should be indicators, results, artifacts, substance, things that show meaningful progress has been made because you invested. And these should be captured as your business milestones. There should be a place where you go through and have document evidence of all the milestones that your business needs to reach and acquire and obtain in order for it to be successful. But these are just wants. We need to really build accountability that works. And so how do we do that? How do we build something and a schedule in such a way that we don't ignore it or just shrug it off as another to-do action item? Schedules that you ignore or don't leverage aren't good schedules. But on the opposite side of that, how do we ensure that we quickly realize when things aren't working? If we're making plans, how do we know, hey, the plan is just not, or maybe we made a really good plan and we can do more with it? Because this will ensure that no matter how much effort you invest into your business, at the end of the day, there is tangible progress. Because you don't get rewarded for just doing work. You get rewarded for results. And so, this is going to be a little controversial. But I'm going to say this, and you're going to say, hey, you might be speaking out of both sides of your mouth. But it's this. Telling yourself that this time, the outcome is going to be different without doing something different is insanity. You need to approach how you're scheduling your milestones differently than how you've done it before. If it didn't work, there's a reason why it didn't work. But at the same time, don't be afraid of missing these deadlines. Controversial. But deadlines aren't the full truth. Part of building a consistently working schedule is learning how to adjust based on looking at what is the smarter way to do things as you get more evidence of having done things in the first place. It's about being proactive and also reactive. On one side, we make the plan, and that's how the deadlines come into being. But on the other side, we also react to the information we get as we move forward with investing into our plan in the first place. Because something that every business initially struggles with is getting to the point of making steady progress. One of my clients that I recently onboarded said that they felt like they were spinning the wheels only to go nowhere. They were putting all this time, all this energy, all these emotions, all these hopes into making their business a reality, but they had nothing to show for it. And I was reminded of a conversation with my love after we started reflecting about where we are in our life and about how we had just different expectations on where we would be at this place. How we had set up these grand ideas of by the time we get to 30, this is what things would look like. We would have this much money in the bank account. We would have this many kids. We would have. And based on these wants in our lifestyle, the closer we got to that age, we really began to evaluate our whole life and what we had done with the time. And so you are not the only one who's struggling with having a schedule, having a timeline of your expectations, yet not feeling as though you've met them. But in the same way of my client, investing your whole life into this, years worth of effort to not have something is frustrating. And that is an honest truth. And so when he came to me, I walked him through these steps. And these are the 4 steps to creating a business plan that actually works. And the first step of that plan is accountability. You can't schedule without someone owning these deadlines. You have to have an ownership for who is responsible for this delegated work. And especially as an entrepreneur, usually that means that person is you. You are the one who is owning your business, so you have to show up for it. And on the other side of it, you need to know the character of the person who has ownership. If they are not accountable, if they are not disciplined, if they don't like structure, if they don't like order, all these things will determine how you need to manage that person against the schedule that you create so your business plan actually happens. This is about knowing how to efficiently allocate work based on skills, based on passion. All these things matter because if there is a better person to do it, you need to know. If there is a better way to manage, you need to know. And this only comes by having accountability to who the owner is. As an entrepreneur, most of the work will fall on you. You need to understand that. There is no sugarcoating that. If you don't show up for your business as an entrepreneur, you own it, therefore it will fail. And that is the first step, accountability. But then the next step in that is the availability. It is understanding the resources that are available. Once I talked to my client, and he was, again, the sole person driving, building out his business plan, making sure it worked at the end of it, I asked him, okay, do you understand the resources that you really have before you begin working? Because availability matters. It is critical to understand availability when you start making a business plan. Because think of it. If you are waiting on something and you need this thing in order to deliver on a deadline, but you schedule this deadline before that thing arrives, you have already set yourself up to fail. I was looking through his recollection of his history building his business, and one of the things we went through and he brought up was how he was trying to build an application for his business, yet he hadn't yet structured what his business was. He had jumped a step he wasn't ready for. And then not only that, he didn't have the software yet to build out the application he was trying to build. He was just working out of creativity, which is good, but he was moving at a pace that did not make sense because what he needed had not yet arrived. And then on top of that, when it comes to the availability, the capacity to do the work must be there. How much time do you need available to put towards your investments? How much material do you need for you to complete these tasks? If you don't have the time, if you don't have enough of the resources, but you need them, and you haven't accounted for when you'll actually have them, your plan will fail because you don't have enough of it. And so availability is all about that, making sure you actually have what you need to deliver, and you have enough of it to deliver it on time. So far we have accountability, we have availability, but the third step is the agenda. You need to schedule when your expectations will be met, because these are your celebration dates. They're not just deadlines. These are the dates. These are the days when you will be able to celebrate having made progress. Be as thorough as possible. You want to map out what the milestone is, what the want is. You need to map out what is required, what resources do you need, how much of those resources do you need, and then you need to give it a reasonable date and timeline for you to deliver on it. This is the combination where you now can have something that is tangible because it's doable, it's feasible. And when you are building out your agenda, you need to give yourself enough grace. You don't want to put pressure that doesn't need to exist. Know that you have given yourself enough time. You've given yourself the buffer. You've looked at the constraints and the timelines, and you have enough to complete what you've said you're going to sign up for. That is your agenda. Because when you create it, you want to stay as close to meeting the agenda that you set for yourself. Through discipline, you know, I have looked at everything. I've seen what it costs, what it takes, and I have made sure I can do that. That is that part of it, building out a good agenda. And so for my client, that means he had to go through and, again, first find out what he wanted and needed his business to do. What were those places where he would find the satisfaction to know my business is actually doing something? And because it's working and it's maturing, I'm putting myself in a better position to get more clients. It was the place where he said, okay, cool. I now really understood my prerequisites. I made sure that I actually had them so that way I could use them. That was the agenda. And once he gathered all that together, he now can move on to the next step. Guess what it might be? The next step is acceptance. You need to say, is this feasible now that I'm committing to it? Because at some point you have to stop lying to yourself. If you are being unrealistic with the schedule that you're setting for your business, it will fail because it sounded good, but objectively did not fit the lifestyle that you're currently living. Everyone wants to plan based on where they're going to go to, where they're going to get to, and that's great. But if your plan does not accommodate for that, and it does not meet you at where you are, you will fail because it's not doable at where you are. And so you need to accept where you are. And you need to accept the plan that meets you at where you are. And as you're doing the acceptance, the other side of it is going through and tracking what progress you've made and updating your agenda to reflect that. This is how you know when things are failing, when you're falling behind what you said you should be doing. When you start really seeing, okay, this was supposed to take up this much resources, and it took up more. And not only did it take up more resources, but it took up more time. Because that will allow you to see how it affects the rest of the things that you had planned. It will allow you to start having the ability to forecast what other things in the pipeline are going to fail because of something that happened earlier. This is also how you know when you have more resources because you finished things earlier than you anticipated. And now you can do extra. Now you have the more time. Now you have more of that resource that you can use for something else, another project. All these things come from accepting the plan, accepting the reality of the plan at your current lifestyle, and accepting how you're making progress against the plan. These are the 4 steps you need to take if you want to build a business plan that actually works. Because the wins don't need to be huge. They just need to matter each time. It's not an overnight success. This story is one about incrementally moving forward. And so for someone who is disciplined, for someone who shows up, a schedule, that agenda, that plan becomes the step-by-step GPS to your success. And so evaluate what steps have been keeping you from having tangible benefits. Because once you acknowledge those, you can change it. And then evaluate how to manage your expectations so that way you can create something that actually works for where you are. This is how you go to building a plan that actually succeeds. Stop having New Year's resolutions that you don't meet. Stop having goals that you set for yourself that you'll never acquire. Build plans by scheduling your business milestones. And if you want to start the journey to really making that progress and seeing at the end of it, having a valuable system that works for your business, reach out to our team through our social media platforms. So that way we can set up a discovery call with you to get you the tools to succeed. Empowering you with the framework to scale your business is how we take you to living a lifestyle that creates value. And so don't hesitate to reach out or connect. If this hit home for you, follow our story and get insights every week here with us. Be connected. Leave your comments, your questions below, and as always, come back for our next session because that's how you'll progress each time. I love doing these, and there will come a point, a day where you wake up and you do exactly what you enjoy doing while also generating value and wealth out of it. All that's required is a schedule that actually moves you forward to doing that. This has been Damari, CEO and founder of Envisioned, and as always, love and peace. Until our next session, goodbye.